Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Mayo with DiamondIT, and we're bringing you Town Hall lessons learned from recent city breaches, just to kind of give you an idea of where this all originated from and what we're hoping to accomplish here. Back in, I believe, late October or early November of 2020, one of the cities in our local geo here in Central California suffered a ransomware attack. And we were reached out to by that particular city and asked to help with some remediation items. And of course, some of the cities that we already supported started ringing our phones with concerns about if they may be the next attack vector or what we've learned from what's going on with the current cities. So we put together a quick town hall, as we called it, and I got 4 or 5 cities together back in October to start discussing how we can better protect our communities and our local municipalities from these ransomware attacks that seem to be targeting more and more municipalities. Excuse me, sorry. Targeting more and more municipalities every day. There was a emergency services broadcast from our county out to cities that the FBI had warned that cities were under a high level of attack, particularly, all businesses are, but that cities were of particular interest to cyber threat actors. And we thought it'd be useful to continue these discussions and continue to share some of the lessons that we've learned as being in the remediation position, and hopefully give everyone on this call some dialogue to talk about either lessons they've learned or bring forward some discussion points about concerns you may have and how we may be able to help you either better protect your municipalities, or in the unfortunate event that you do suffer a breach, that we can get you quickly restored by having a good plan in place and just thinking about really some key items that aren't necessarily high budgetary spend items, but just really a rinse and repeat thought process that will definitely help in the restoration process, since if you ever come across that situation. So a little bit about our moderators today. I'm Matt Mayo with DiamondIT. I'm the CEO. I brought a couple of our internal experts along the way that have a particular focus on protecting municipalities and strategically aligning municipalities' IT objectives and compliancy needs. We have Jeremy Meehan, who is with us. He's our Chief Technology Officer. Works with many municipalities on planning and designing IT with a security thought process. We have Cody Cooper, who is our Chief Information Security Officer here internally. Also our one of our customer-facing CSOs, who works with many cities. And he's recently been a part of some blue team remediation. Both Jeremy and Cody have worked with city council members, police chiefs, finance managers at different capacities, both in day-to-day operations of securing their networks, but also after the fact, and have some lessons that they can share as well. So gentlemen, if we can move right on into things, few little housekeeping items. This is your town hall, so we want to make sure that you get all of your questions out, and we'll be here to answer any of your questions through our experiences. But we also have some experiences we'd like to bring to the table. A few housekeeping items. We'll open everyone's mics up in just a second here, and we'd like to ask to don't forget to raise your hand and unmute yourself when you would like to speak or talk, and we'll make sure that we facilitate it in a way that everybody gets a chance to bring forward their thoughts and ideas. And we're also going to send everyone a link to the recording after our event, so drop us a note. Make sure we have your email address, or share with us that you have an interest in receiving a recording, and we'd be happy to send it to you. Our sessions are always recorded for those that may not be able to attend the event. We do get registrants who do like to get the recorded event and watch it afterwards. So without further ado, I think maybe we can jump right into a poll item that'll get the conversation kicked off. Cody, I think we'd like to poll and see who has experienced a cyber attack or really feels that they may be the next statistic. Hopefully we can throw a poll up here in just a second, and we'll see how we can get the conversation started here and flowing. I think it'll be.
I know it's tough. One of the buzzwords here and since COVID has been, you're on mute, right? So don't forget to either raise your hand or unmute your mic. If you guys have an experience you guys would like to share with us or with the group, we'd love to hear about any past experiences you guys might have, any issues or incidents or situations, or even experiences and concerns you guys might want to share. Looks like you got a couple respondents here.
I answered the poll. Hopefully I'm allowed.
Do I need to counteract your vote there, Cody?
Yeah. Give everybody a minute and a chance to respond.
What's unfortunate is I'm already seeing it looks like we've had a lot more people experience cybersecurity incidents than not. So that's unfortunate, but not surprising.
So Jeremy, maybe it's a great time to unmute those mics, and let's see if we can get some conversations rolling. And Cody, I know you recently helped some of our customers through some experiences and some new customers. Can you maybe share a little bit about some of the things that you saw that maybe would be some things that other cities could consider or other municipalities consider in your experiences?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to cybersecurity incidences, right? But the thing that strikes me the most is, generally speaking, it sneaks up on you. It's not as if you have this sort of forewarning days in advance, right? It's just, it'll be Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. or over the weekend or Monday morning when you come in. It's just sort of random, it seems. And oftentimes when we first hear about breaches or any kind of cybersecurity incident, it's usually benign. It's usually something like email doesn't work anymore or my files aren't working. So the ticket starts, as this sort of like, just normal help desk ticket. And, we're calling in, trying to figure out what's going on, and we're just kind of troubleshooting stuff. And only after you look into it further do you realize, oh, this is something much greater. And that's the thing that always sticks with me with most of these cybersecurity incidents is it just starts very, very innocent. And then within an hour, alarms are going off and things aren't working. So that's kind of my first reaction to all of these. Lately, what I've been seeing a lot of is ransomware. Almost all of it has been ransomware or email phishing, I would say, are the two biggest things I've seen here in Kern County so far. And in the ransomware incidences that we have responded to, we've responded to it in a number of different ways. Sometimes the client or the person calling in is just asking for help because they can't get everyone back online and working with their small IT team, so they need extra manpower. Another times, everything's gone and they need to be rebuilt from scratch. So I would say every case is different, but in general, what I find is just sort of, the more prepared you are for these kinds of incidences, the faster you are able to recover. And it looks like, based on the poll now, we've got 5 people who have experienced cybersecurity incidences so far, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, in the past year, we've had 2 cities that I know of, at least, that have gotten hits, and numerous people who were not our clients but who have now joined us. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. And in my briefings with the FBI that we get every week, we also get a daily newsletter from them. The occurrence is just continuing to rise, as everyone already knows. So, yeah, it's becoming a big part of working in businesses these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just to add to that a little bit, I think that when we work with the local regional FBI, we're usually debriefed where they find out that we're involved in these remediations. And one of the things that we were talking about in our last debriefing with the local field agent here that handles the cybersecurity attacks was that we suspect, and through these town halls, if we can find and get discussions, that the same ransomware that was used for the initial city that was under attack last year, at the end of last year, we suspect may be, the same ransomware that's being used on other cities. And by kind of joining forces here and understanding and talking about the incidents, we feel like we can help, authorities and get the word out that these are the attack vectors, and help us better protect and share that information, because we're finding that these attacks are showing against municipalities are showing similar signatures and patterns. We may be able to help protect those that haven't been breached yet, if we can understand better and open up a little bit about our conversations and our experiences. So I welcome anybody to share what they recently went through, and any experiences that they think that they would have either done differently or approached differently, or just how they feel like you got through it, and anything you could share here. So I don't know if we have anybody.
I can share one experience while we kind of wait to see if anybody else wants to share. We had a client, and this isn't a ransomware, this is actually more of an email phishing one, but we did have a client at one point that they had an email that had gone through that was pretending to be the CEO or the the leader of this organization, and that email went through and it asked for money to be wired. And the person responded to it with some sort of response, something along the lines of, I can do that in about an hour, give me a minute and I'll get to it. We didn't catch it right away, right? So that email went through, and then I started getting alerts that something fishy had happened, pardon the pun. And as we started looking into it, I realized that the owner's name wasn't spelled the same way as the name and the email address, right? So I called the leader of this organization, and I said, hey, I'm pretty sure someone's phishing you right now. And this was at nighttime. I actually interrupted him at dinner, and he said, no, everything seems to be fine. We haven't had any issues today. And I said, I am pretty sure this user responded to a phishing email. I need you to check now. And he called that employee of his and responded back and said, no, they said they've never gotten any weird emails from me at all today. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I let them go for about 20 minutes, and I'm just sitting there thinking, no, I'm not wrong. There's something going on. So I called him back and I said, I really need you to double check. Did she send any money today? And he's like, well, okay, I'll call her again. And he calls her again. And he said, yeah, she said she received a request from me for money for a large sum that I don't remember sending this. And I had to explain, you didn't send it. You guys are being phished. We need to stop this now. And so we started going through this investigation, and we actually ended up stopping the transaction before she sent it. So that was a great success story. But the thing that spoke out to me was the person sent it at 5 p.m. after a lot of people had already gone home. They sent it to a single person who was in charge of finances. My best guess is they figured out through LinkedIn who the financial officer was for this organization. They figured out her email, and they emailed her specifically. And they mimicked the patterns of that person, how they wrote on Facebook. They mimicked that leader's patterns of writing. So when they wrote the email, it seemed very accurate as well. But it just stuck out to me how that person had received a request for finances, was going to honor it, and didn't even realize the difference because how well that person had mimicked them. And that's not an example of ransomware, but it is a good example, I think, of why we just need to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, we just recently, I sit on a security council with other technology service providers around the country that are security focused, that share best practices and what they're seeing out in the field. A lot of white hat hackers and people that are combating these threats and supply chain threats. And there's, many in our business that are, much like cities, that are looked at as a high attack vector because of, our ability to access other networks and things of that nature. So we have a particular sensitivity to making sure that we follow, high level security practices. And the gentleman that was sharing, he said, he first thought about it because the meeting was being recorded, and he thought, well, the story ended up good. But the thing I want to drive home in this meeting, and I think it's probably going to be one of the key things you talk about, Cody, as we move forward, is MFA and the importance that, when all of the other defenses fail, security awareness training, and all of those other pieces fail. And for the big inconvenience and difficulty that MFA can be to get into an organization, it's worth the challenges, because in this story, a new level 1 technician got hired into this organization. And, you know, we're IT people. So what we do really well is we have these really cool scripts that we send out that everyone can self-service and log in and set up their email and, you know, and get access to all the areas of the business that they need to service the customers. So through this self-servicing, you know, I think that he mentioned there was 15 or 16 different links that had been streamlined, made the onboarding process really easy for HR and really convenient. And he got set up on a Friday and he was phished on his first day. So he clicked for, they're assuming from one of these third-party email providers, you know, that we, you know, whether it was Microsoft, it was through another subscription service that he was gaining access to in order to service the customers, that they got, the threat actor got a hold of, and he clicked on the email and his credentials were compromised. They got his username and password, and they were trying to get into Partner Center, which is where you know, they could get to Azure and O365 and all of these other places. So a couple of things that stopped it was, and the big lesson learned was, MFA, they can't get past, even if they've stolen your credentials without you double verifying who you are, they were pounding it and pounding it, trying to get through, and the SOC was reading it, and they contacted someone like Cody on their team, much like the incident you just shared. Hey, we have the SOC showing these failed login attempts on this email account, like 100 of them, and they're trying to hit Partner Center, which is where all of their data was hosted through Microsoft. And it was MFA that, and him not activating that second credential that kept them from getting through. But as soon as they got it, man, they were on it. And so a couple of things, even with, you know, when you onboard a new employee, what are you starting with was my question, is do I really need to start with security awareness training before I even give you a login into the network? It almost feels like you need to start your employee onboarding there, because so many people that we went to hire a receptionist to bring in, and we went through, you know, attempt to hire so we could find the right one, and the first two didn't know Outlook. So I assume that if they don't know how to use Outlook, then they probably haven't had any kind of training around phishing emails. So I think in this day and age, we're assuming that employees have certain skill sets or awarenesses, and we're finding out otherwise. But you know, if the training doesn't work, and in every case it's not going to, it's going to minimize the amount of people that are clicking, because it only takes one. The MFA, the multi-factor authentication, 99% of the time is going to be what saves your skin. And one more piece on this, I promise, and I'm going to mute myself and let you. One more piece. Insurance now. A lot of people are hiding behind insurance policies, and some people don't have them and other people do. But big red flag, and I got a snippet I can share in chat. Traveler's insurance. We are now being asked to do attestations that people with cyber insurance have a full MFA implementation. And that's not just on email and your O365, that's on all of your programs. Because if you cannot attest that you have rolled MFA out, you are not going to have coverage if you're attacked. And we're seeing the same thing. They're sending us as the IT company to do these attestations, and in many cases we can't because they haven't rolled these things out. And insurance companies are not going to cover ransomware attacks if MFA is not rolled out. And if I would definitely check with your cyber insurance company, but be expecting to see some attestations, and insurance prices going up by about 25%. It's getting harder and harder to get insurance. And when they do, they want to make sure that you have lock, stock, and barrel, a high level of security tools on your network. And that's where it's all going. So insurance isn't going to be easily available without putting these precautionary things in place.
Yeah, I will say I've been doing insurance forms for about 3 years now, right, for our clients. And it used to be a 1-page PDF. It's now a 6-page monster of questions about what kind of protection you have. So, so it doesn't seem like we have anyone who wants to volunteer kind of what they've been through for ransomware. But I will go ahead and I will say that in some of the times that I have responded to ransomware where it starts out with something not working, it quickly snowballs from there to bigger problems. Files stop working. A very common sign is everything on your desktop is white squares, all your icons. Usually internet will stop working at some point, email will stop working, and things just sort of start to degrade, and then you'll start receiving phone calls from other people. It'll start with 2 or 3, and then it kind of spreads outward, and soon you have whole departments calling you saying things aren't working. Has been my experience multiple times now with ransomware. And it will start spreading through the internet by itself, or I should say through the network by itself. And so it might hit one department, but if that department shares files with another department, it'll spread to both of them. And in the majority of the cases, what happens is either myself or the insurance's forensics team will come in and they will start to analyze things. And some of the things that I didn't realize until I first started doing this a number of years ago is that when you realize that you're under a ransomware attack, you kind of have a decision at that point. And you have to ask yourself, am I going to be calling insurance? And 9 times out of 10, you want to absolutely be doing that to make sure you're covered. And then the question is, am I going to call the FBI? And those are both 2 questions that I've asked multiple people when I show up on site for these incidences is, what kind of insurance do you have? Do you want to handle that first? And then we can call law enforcement. But I think it's important to be aware the roles they play, right? So the FBI, when you call them, they're not going to help you with the ransomware attack. They're not going to try and fix it for you. They're going to ask you for logs. They're going to ask you what kind of protection you had. They're going to ask you what kind of things you've seen, because they're trying to catch the bad guy. But what they're not going to do is they're not going to undo the ransomware for you. They can. They don't. It's not something that can be undone, generally speaking. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we think when we call the authorities that they're going to rescue us. No, unfortunately, they may not. They're just there to try and prevent the next person from getting hit. So that's one lesson I learned the hard way years ago. The other one is when you call insurance, keep in mind with insurance, they're going to want to come out and investigate before they start remediating. They're going to want to figure out what happened, and they're going to ask the question, do you have logs? Because they want to know, did your data get exfiltrated? In other words, if you have data for your citizens or the people who live in your municipality, did that information get out? Because now we've got privacy violations and regulations that we're no longer compliant with, on top of just ransomware itself. So the insurance is going to ask that, and then you might be down for multiple days while the insurance company investigates what's going on. So now you have to figure out, how am I going to spin that? How am I going to explain that to the public? Because they're going to start asking why systems aren't working, and they're going to start knocking on your doors, wanting to know if they can pay this bill or do this or that. And you just need to have a way. I would recommend a person to communicate that plan. But those are 2 big takeaways that I think a lot of people don't realize. The FBI is not going to show up and fix the problem, and the insurance company is not going to fix it right away because they want to cross their T's before they do anything. So it's going to be multiple days of you being down when you do this. And then finally at some point, either the insurance company will start remediating, or they'll hire somebody like us to come and help you. And that's been my experience that's really surprised me. It was working with those 2 organizations, and both are very different. And finally, the last piece that I will say that I have learned is, when you finally do get that green light to start remediating, it can take some time depending on the size of your organization and the size of your IT team. Even if you have backups for all your servers, you're still going to have to wipe every machine, every device, regardless of it's a fridge with a Wi-Fi connection. Anything that is a computer is going to have to get wiped, because it's all going to be infected. So even though you have backups and you think, oh, I can restore backups within a day, which we can do. We've done that before for people who have all of our tools. That still means you still have to go and hit all those other machines. So if you're a city with 400 employees and you have 400 computers that you have to reconfigure, and you're estimating maybe an hour per computer, that should give you a general idea of the kind of labor we're talking about to finally get back to square one again. So just some things to keep in mind, some big lessons that I think we don't think about until it happens.
Hey, that's actually a great point. The city that was breached back in late 2020, that was one of the services that we actually didn't have available staff at the level that I think being prepared or having people on retainer or some kind of agreement in place with the assumption that you're going to have to wipe machines, and that if you don't have internal people at that capacity to do that, that is going to speed the time, because that was really the concern was that we didn't have people to pull to handle another city's ransomware attack. I mean, we could have, you know, definitely planned around that or helped them plan better around that or guaranteed some resources. So that was a big lesson, I think, when we got that call. And also the idea of it took weeks because of insurance, I think. And I wasn't in on the conversations, but the forensics had to be done first. And
Yep.
then the wiping process had to wait until the forensics was done. So depending on how quickly the forensics are done. And then the third piece, Cody, and we were talking about this earlier, is an important point to bring to the town hall. California Data Privacy Acts start getting triggered, and we see tickets all of a sudden of citizens requesting.
Yes.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. That was we didn't really have in our thought process of now how long will this happen and what is that expense going to be when they start asking if public information was
Yes,
released.
thank you for that. That was a new one too. That started this year. For those of you who maybe haven't heard or not aware, so there's FOIA, right? Federal, here I'm going to butcher my acronym, but it's a Freedom of Information Act, right? So now private citizens can request information from their government, and depending on the request, legally you have to respond and provide that information. California has something very similar, CPRA, and the California Privacy Act as well, where they can submit requests to your organization, and you technically, depending on the request, have to provide that information. So when it gets out that you've been hit by a ransomware breach, don't be surprised if you have local citizens who are now sending in these requests saying, we want to know everything about this and we want to know everything about that. We've been seeing a lot of those lately, and it kind of caught us off guard because now we are sifting through all that information, trying to compile all of it and provide it to the city that then has to figure out how it wants to present it to the person that requested it. But that was something I wasn't expecting. But it seems like the moment something negative happens, everyone wants to know what happened and they want to start digging into it. So don't be surprised if you start getting FOIA requests after a breach. Absolutely.
It almost seems that you have to be well prepared for your press releases. You almost have to take the stance so you can control the narrative, because the press is going to show up at the door if the word gets out, and they're going to have their own interpretations depending on who they talk to. So I really think that, you know, being able to control that narrative a little bit, you know, with the facts, and then letting them know when you're going to be available to give them updates, the public updates, like, we'll have an update, you know, 2 weeks, whether there's anything to update or not, that just having a predetermined way and having a liaison, I think you mentioned earlier, that so that the story stays consistent too, because it can change based off who's being interviewed as well too. So we saw some of that go on.
Yes.
Where that could cause, you know, just the press implications and the additional questions based off of how things are being answered. So having very controlled thought process and narrative, I think, was a big thing that I observed. Cody, you probably have some
yeah, on. I don't mean to share another anecdote, but I do remember a particular city that had ransomware breaches, and the press started asking them questions. And what was happening is the newspaper reporters were going to one group of people, the television reporters were going to a second group of people, and they would just find random employees as they were getting off their shift and just ask them. So pretty soon, the information was very muddled with a lot of different accounts, some of them kind of inaccurate, that was being pressed around the city. So I would definitely suggest some sort of training with your employees, and probably designating a public affairs officer of some kind to just sort of get in front of that.
And I don't know if it's a good time to poll and see how many people have an incident response plan in place, but these are all things that would be documented and written. I think one of our finance managers from one of our cities that we manage today has joined us, and I know in our last town hall, I still was left with one of the most interesting comments. I won't call her out by name, but she said, you know, we do incident response planning for earthquakes and floods, and we practice these things and we put these bulletins out. But why aren't we doing this for cyber threats and having the same thing? And I thought that was a big aha moment during that first town hall of, you know, really getting an incident response plan, because it'll cover all of these areas of how are you going to address the press and who is that person, And, you know, all of these questions will get asked and flushed out ahead of time. That will speed the restoration process. It will, you know, lessen the pain of the confusion. And I think, you know, just in, you know, organize the thoughts and the process around getting restored in an effective, efficient manner instead of spending time trying to explain what happened. So, yeah, thank you, Cody.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I'm always curious to hear what people have done, because usually it's not everything, right? Because we all have budgets that we have to maintain, and we can't realistically spend money on everything. But
Sure.
it was always interesting to me to see what people have prioritized, whether it's a plan or it's antivirus or backups. They're all important, you know. So,
Yeah.
and speaking of budgeting, Matt, did you were telling me earlier today about ARPA funding? Am I saying that right?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So I know that we've had some folks that in cities that have leveraged either CARES Act funding or ARPA funding. I think in some of our conversations, you know, there's different ways and tactics that cities can use it where you know there's less paperwork involved in using funds and getting funds approved, whether it's, you know, through general budget things that got pulled off the budget. I'm not sure how many know about the Technology Modernization Fund that was set aside by the Treasury Department specifically for funds to modernize municipalities' IT networks, and also focus on any cybersecurity initiatives that are really in high volume. And I think the big takeaway is that it was more of a, I think initially there was some resistance because it was more of a borrowing mechanism for cities to borrow funds to modernize. But there's been some updates to the payback where there was some resistance on cities utilizing it because there was a full payback. It looks like they're loosening those and they're encouraging people to submit their proposals there. And it looks like there's going to be, you know, a large loan forgiveness or 100% loan forgiveness against that modernization fund. So I don't know how many, if we can ask how many of, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, ping us in chat and I'd be happy to share with you what we've learned about it through our conversations. Because I think what I've learned through the end of the day is, you know, the most recent city that we held had every plan in place to modernize and hire a IT company that could modernize and secure their network, but they were 2 weeks behind the, you know, 2 weeks too late before ransomware struck. So I think we see a lot of people have the plans in place and don't have the funding, or they finally secured the funding and now they've got to get it through the board, the process. And these things in municipalities take more time than it does in private businesses to get adoption and buy-in and city councils and budgets approved. So we've been really trying to pay attention to the areas that may help pay for some of these things. And I'm sure we have many finance managers and others that are on. I'm not sure how many have used these funds. Sure would love for anyone to share that's willing on if you've been able to secure funds and what that experience has been like, and if you've used any of these technology modernization funds at all.
Real quick, Matt, while everyone is, Vicky, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to tell you about the ARPA. We just received 3.3 million from ARPA. So that I have got every kind of information you could think of about it, what we can use it for, what we can't use it for, how to get around using it for software and hardware. That was yesterday. I was in a meeting for a long time, how to get that. So Cody, if you'd like me to send that to you or something, it was so interesting because I was a little disappointed when we first received the money because it was so limited. And I'm like, oh, this is not even going to begin to do what we wanted to do. But then as you dig deeper, that was so brief that you really can use it for, like you say, come up to speed. We are so far behind the curve here that I kept telling him I needed half of that. So we are actually having a town hall meeting to see what anybody else you know, has any ideas of what we can do with the funds and stuff. So I need to go on really strong with what we need here within the city to run our city, do our jobs.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just gotten better and better. But like I say, last week I was like, oh, not what we were looking for. But and then we also received CARES money too. So it's been real fortunate to get a few funds to move forward. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's really good.
Now, Vicky, is it, any of that been set aside particularly for technology, or is it just one of the many things that, you know, I mean, I know some cities are going to use their CARES funds for building roads, and you're probably suggesting in your budgets as a finance manager that is it set a portion aside to do these things that can be covered under that? Is that how you're presenting it to your council?
Right, yeah, that's why I want to go in strong and be like, you know, and tell the public that this is what we need. Tell us what you would like, but this is what we need out of this piece, because you only receive half, and we'll get the other half next year.
Yeah.
So mine is to pull every bit of IT out of the budgets that we can.
Yeah.
And use the ARPA funds. And we just got a list yesterday of PCs that need to be replaced here, and it was like overwhelming. There's got to be 30 of them right away that have to go. And so yeah, that's what I'm going in with is software, hardware. You won't give us the people, give us the software. I feel protected now with Diamond, you know, so I'm glad that we're over that hurdle. But we have a long ways to go. Just to say that I feel good in the morning when I turn on my computer and it's going to work. You know, we just replaced two of them that were 12 and 11 years old, the PCs. So, but yeah, that's what I'm going in with, and I'll have a price of what I need, and this is what I need to do with it. You know, you can also use it for your parks and rec. You can use it. We have a well that's down. It's for water, things like that. So we can more than use our $3.3 million when we're done. I would like to pay my DiamondIT contract for 2 years out of it. You know, get it off of everybody's lap, because it hit them so hard and so fast that this is what we need to do. Now, put it in your budget, you know, so we can get them to prepare a little bit better. You know, give them 2 years. I think
that's a great point. It's also available for multi-year agreements to move to the cloud or your O365. Didn't they extend it out to like 2026 or something where you can pay for services?
2024, you need to have it secured somewhere. 2026, I believe you have to have the last expenditure paid. So at the size of our city, we only have to report once a year. Bigger cities have to report, I think, every quarter or something like that. So, but by the end of October, we have to come up with a plan. You come up with a plan by then, or you send the money back. So that's why we're.
Well, I think that's the other key takeaway for us is if you don't have a plan, now's the time to get one together. It seems like the funds, if you didn't have funds available to upgrade your network before, it seems like they're, you know, if that's the priorities of your city, that they're available today. And now's the time to do it and get your plan together and really get someone in there to help you put all that stuff together on your wish list, because there may not be another opportunity for 10 years to really, you know, get yourself upgraded again. So that's a big takeaway, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is our one-time funding, and you know, we can bring ourselves up. I think we're 15, 20 years behind here. So we have a lot to do. A lot to do for us, and unfortunately for DiamondIT too, because we are constantly send them a ticket, you know. So, but we have a lot of questions, and I really love that we could be taught. I came from the federal government. It's black and white. This is the way it is, you know.
Yes.
The people I work with do not. They think you're at home. You know, you're not at home anymore. You can't plug anything in here that you want to. So we need education really bad here, you know. So
I think that's the key and why we want to get everyone together. And I think it's so important. And thank you so much for, you know, sharing, because I think it's valuable for us to, You know, I mean, sometimes the problem is just securing the funds. The intention is always there, but the funds and the and the things you need in place to do it aren't, and it sometimes takes these emergency states to get to get the government to put the money in the right places and allow you to use it in the ways that you need to use it. And I think now's the time for that. So I don't know if anybody else has any share, but I really appreciate that, Vicki. That's excellent that you got all that funding, and to think that it wasn't even, you weren't expecting that you were going to get near that amount is pretty nice too.
No, we thought it was, like 2.5, and it came in at 3.3, a little over 3.3 actually. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and then I just get an email saying it's here. I go, what? I go, it was a fast movie. It wasn't one of those that took months to get. I mean, paper was filled out, and they distributed the funds.
Yeah.
So now we just have to move faster to get it secured somewhere. And I think we can do it. I mean, there's so much that we need, and then in just the overtime that COVID has caused us, and things like that. We've waived water late fees, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to manipulate that money, that if I receive those funds for, say, all the overtime, now it comes into my general fund. Now I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah.
So now there's a different story. I'm proving you that I need it for overtime, but then you're paying us back. Now I can spend it on something else that's not on the list.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot. I've got stacks of info if you want me to scan it in and show you, because it was so interesting yesterday, talking to a gentleman of what he's been helping all the cities with. So
yeah, Vicki,
yeah, we were devastated, right, Cody? I mean, it's like it was just like, we can't even cut a paycheck. We were down.
Yeah.
Totally down. So
that
and then again, for weeks I've been talking about what's our contingency. We have no contingencies here, people. What do we do? What do we do if there's an active shooter? What do we do? Just things that you're thinking of, and I wasn't thinking of the security of our server at the time. So, but we knew we had problems, and we were trying to budget for it for the next year. So we did start out with a pretty good heavy budget to get something.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's done. It's secure.
Back in business finally,
So,
huh? Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah. It took us, not only for them to get us up and running, for us to fix everything we had to do by hand. Now we had to enter it before we could do the next pay period, and then the next one, who owed us time and we owed them time. It was a mess for a long time for us, but we're okay. We're going forward.
You raise another great point, I think, is just really thinking about, if you do or don't have insurance, but just budgeting for all of the things that are going to come from that. And I think one of the lessons we learned when we went in and were helping answer questions around, budgeting for the restoration by the city council, they had a very different impression of, what something like this may cost to get to get your city back up to what, the reality of the situation was. And I don't think that they really had budgeted or put that into any kind of consideration. And that was something, just Jeremy, I know you did a lot of those city council meetings, and they were, I think that the share is that they weren't really expecting to hear that, how costly restoring services and getting back to, a place was. And Vicki, you probably had some of that experience as well, trying to explain that to people that weren't in the middle of the fight at the time.
Right. And they thought that once we were up, you got us back on the server. We got our financial software back online. We did have email, but we had everything else. They thought we were fine.
Yeah.
And no, we're not. You just don't understand the damage it did and the work it caused, and we're already don't have enough people on staff. So it just kept taxing us more and more of
it snowballs.
What's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like I say, I just now feel, I think this pay period we're going to come out clean finally. And when did it happen? Like 1st of June into May or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I got lists. I kept asking, how did it affect you? And I just got pages and pages of things. Some people, it was just like, oh, I couldn't get my email. Well, okay, that was the least of my worry. My worry was to get everybody paid, get our bills paid. We couldn't pay bills. We couldn't bring in money, which is our water. We bring in, thousands of dollars every month for water bills. We couldn't take money. Couldn't do anything with it. We couldn't process it. So luckily, the public, I think, was a little more understanding than, say, our council. For some reason, they come in and we tell them what's happened. They go, oh, okay, I'll come back in a couple of days. They're very understanding. Yeah, which we were surprised,
No, that can not always work out that way. Yeah, it doesn't always work out that way. That's right. Yeah.
So
thank you for sharing that.
It was devastating. It was devastating. But if you weren't here and you weren't in the middle of it, you can never understand, I think, what happened.
Yeah, I shared that Cody came back and said, I never realized, it was pretty heartbreaking. He shared that there was some tears that people had lost this work that they'd put together 6-7 years of putting the, very hard work into something that they were going to, how do you ever recreate that? And it was, interesting to see, believable, but you don't think about, just how much work and time and effort would have to go into recreating this stuff if you had to really start from scratch without your data. So it was really felt devastating.
Yeah. If we wouldn't have got the financial data back, we would have devastated. I myself had been working off a thumb drive because I didn't trust our server at all. And I hadn't been here very long. It's like, oh, I got 5 months into building this budget. I can't leave it on the server. And I'm glad I did, because I continued working, and everybody would come by my office, how can you do anything? I said, because I didn't put it on the server.
Well, but now you put stuff on the server, right?
Yes, now everything is on the server. Okay. But I'll work off my thumb drive. I work with my thumb drive and put the finished product on the server.
Okay, I'll take it.
But yeah, we're trusting it more and more. And the people that did lose all the data, and I had some stuff I thought I was going to lose. I ended up getting everything back. And I said, shame on me. I didn't put it on the server. I didn't have it backed up.
Yeah.
But they were able to recover my PC. So yeah, that's all they could do. Everybody was like I say, Cody, they were devastated. I'm like, oh well, shame on us. Look what we did.
Yeah.
But we always had kind of a mom and pop taking care of us. Everybody had a hodgepodge of software and hardware, and that's what we're trying to make uniform now. So it's easier for us to track of where we're at. So.
That brought another key thing up, I think, too, because the professionalism of sometimes these smaller, I call them Johnny Ponytails. I hope that's not but the one-man bands that or very small organizations that the data was actually backed up, but we were very fortunate that I think the speed to recovery would have been even faster had we been able to access the backup. So making sure that you have a copy of your passwords from your IT provider or your IT employees, because the lesson that we had to learn there, we literally had to get Barracuda on the phone, and they were held hostage, literally. I mean, I just say it. The guy said, "I'm not giving you the passwords." In the middle of the show, he walked out and I won't repeat what I heard that he said because it's not appropriate for this meeting, but it was it extended the recovery time. I don't know, Cody, how instead of 1 to 2 days by to 3 to 5 days.
Yes. So. Yeah, it was that was one of the worst responses one of the worst recoveries I've ever done, because we didn't have credentials to anything, and without going into Diamond security, because it's sensitive, I will say that we are so paranoid with our own credentials that we have a physical copy that we maintain somewhere, right? So you definitely absolutely want to have a backup of all your passwords and all your licenses and all of that, because once it's all gone, there's no getting it back. And
Right.
And I don't mean to say don't hire someone who's a one-man shop, because they're very good sometimes. But if something happens to that person, you've also lost everything. So you definitely at least pick a two-man shop. So.
And that's really hard in these little cities
Mm-hmm.
to get people to come and help us. And then, of course, if your council doesn't want to have an IT person on site, or it depends on what kind of funds we get. Like I say, it was probably my griping from the day I got here that I would do something. I'm like, what? What is this? I don't. So a year of that has brought us to, let's add some money to our budget. Let's get some money in here to get PCs replaced, get server hardware replaced, anything like that. I never even thought that we didn't have a good firewall up, or I just assumed they had all that, so
yeah,
that hurt us. But and we lost licenses, and everybody was like, I don't know how I got it. I go, we're just gonna have to buy another license and keep track of it.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. You don't even know how you had it. How did you buy it? What is your license number? I don't know. So we're really trying to put control on everything now. You can't buy a PC. You can't buy software. It all has to be approved. They don't like it. A lot of them don't like it. I just turned back a PC that came in. I got the invoice. I go, nope, wasn't bought the right way. Send it back. You're not plugging that in. So, of course, they're not talking to me right now, but it's really, it is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. I'm the big meanie, but yeah, we can't take that chance of just somebody throwing something onto our server. Because I don't even know. I think Jeremy, but was like, are we fully repaired? I mean, we still need hardware for our server. I believe that they want to talk about that, upgrading the server and things like that. We're not. I don't think we're completely there yet. So I don't want to.
Well, Vicki, I love what you've said a couple times here is, that planning and that strategic alignment. We take a lot of pride in making sure that we're meeting with our clients on a regular basis, review your current position, make recommendations, and make sure we're aligning things strategically with your goals and objectives and budgets. We can see a lot of this stuff coming, like a 12-year-old PC, and make sure you guys have time to budget for it. And so when these things do happen, we can speed the recovery. We can make sure we have the assets and the tools and the plans and things in place to get you guys back up quickly, or even to prevent some of these things from happening on a regular basis. Cody was telling stories earlier, about email compromise. We've got examples where email compromises happen because clients didn't follow best practices and strong security recommendations. Things we told customers for more than a year. Hey, you guys really need to adjust this password policy. You guys really need to deploy multi-factor authentication. And sure enough, one of the executives that didn't want to change his password, every 90 days, didn't want to turn on the MFA, was the guy that got hacked, got compromised, and they lost several hundreds of thousands of dollars over those kind of situations. So we can work together to try and make sure we prevent these things just by having those alignment meetings and keeping you guys strategic with IT.
Yeah. I mean, we were begging for help. So,
Yeah, that's true.
Vicki, if you could you send me what you have on ARPA stuff? I know that some people have been asking, so I can disseminate if you have anything.
Yeah. What I got yesterday was so interesting. Like I say, it was disappointing at first, and then now it's just gotten better. It's like getting more and more information, because I knew there had to be more. It had to be deeper than what the 3 lines said we could have.
Yes.
I think the first thing they recommend is get the money, take the money, and now decide what you're going to do with it. So we have our money, and so now we're going to decide. But I will send it to you, because like I say, it just goes a lot deeper than what the Treasury is telling you. It could be. They gave us like 3 options to use the money on it, and it's much deeper than that. So yeah, I will scan it all in and get it to you. So.
Okay. Well, I know we're almost there for time. Does anybody have any questions or anything that we didn't cover, or anything you guys would like to hear about? I can tell war stories for days. So by all means, if anyone has anything.
Yeah, also any suggestions for future topics? Right now, we plan on putting these on quarterly, so sometime before the holidays in November, probably right after the Halloween holiday, we'll have another town hall meeting, and we were talking about doing a little bit deeper dive and doing more deeper conversations about specific challenges and how we've overcome them of rolling out MFA and conditional access in municipalities. You know, we've seen a lot of folks that, you know, well, I can't get my or make my employees put it on their cell phones, which, you know, we found some things where we can overcome those types of challenges. And, you know, other organizations have similar challenges. So we want to dive into some of the real key specifics of what a real good incident response plan for a city would look like. We could share some forms and some planning objectives. So I would love for you to drop in chat any ideas that you would like to get into more of the deeper weeds about, and maybe we can dive a little deeper into the specific things, the 3 or 4 things that we really feel like if you pay attention to, that will keep the wheels on the bus for, you know, for your city in those buckets, in those areas. If you have projects around implementing those things, we have 3 or 4 we would like to deep dive into and help you through any challenges you foresee of getting those things through, because we feel like they're going to be the key critical pieces to your organization recovering well. Should you suffer, like, you know, as some of the cities have shared today, suffer, you know, your own ransomware attack, and hopefully the information will help, you know, keep a city or 2 from being a statistic in this deal. So drop anything you'd like us to do. We'll put some items together and put together another town hall where we can, you know, dive a little deeper into these things and start putting together some of the plans and policies that we think will help your municipalities and, of course, the constituents they serve have a better, you know, a better experience. So please, again, we'll leave the chat open, and any questions we would love to answer here for another few minutes, and then we'll close it out. And also, just a reminder, if you want a copy of the town hall meeting, we'll get that out to you as well if you just drop your email and chat.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Vicki, thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences and everything today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
Very welcome. Thank you everyone for submitting your polls. I think we find your answers very, very interesting.